This one.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for joining us for our September 25th, 2024 Council Committee meeting this evening. It is 6:00 p.m. and I will call our committee meeting to order. For this evening, our committee issues will be relevant to October 1st and October 15th, 2024 legislative agenda. Up next on the agenda, we have Public Works. I will hand it over to Councilwoman Dennis.
Good evening, everyone. We have a resolution approving purchase of a bucket truck. Do we have anyone that can speak on that?
Sure. What we're looking to do is replace a 1988 bucket truck for our department. We have one on order now. It should be, originally it was getting delivered in 2023. They moved it to 2024. Now they told us 2025. But they gave us the opportunity to purchase a truck that was canceled at the same time. We were going to replace both trucks that we have. So this truck would be replacing a 1988. The other truck is replacing a 1986. So our truck fleet is pretty old. They're no longer passing our inspections. The yearly inspections are costing us anywhere between $20,000 and $25,000 to get the repairs made. So it's time to bite the bullet.
Okay.
And I think council last year approved the purchase of the other one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any more comments from council?
I have a question. Does the city ever share equipment with the school district? Because I haven't been able to double check, but I heard that they are also approved purchase of a bucket truck, and didn't know if there'd be any opportunity for synergy or sharing.
We used to share a truck with them. If they would need a truck, we would loan them a truck for a day or two or whatever. Then they actually bought one of our, I'll call it a discarded truck for us. It didn't meet our qualifications anymore, so we sold it to them. Now I know they're looking to purchase a truck there, so I don't know what their needs or uses are anymore, but there's opportunity there if we had to. Yeah, we need ours full time. I mean, it's not something that would be
Okay.
that we could borrow from them.
Got it. Thank you.
Dave, with the newer trucks being purchased, will we get more use and years out of? I know the other ones when we
Yeah,
had
so
like 88 and 86.
Yeah, if you look at, so we had an 86 and 88, I expect to, knock on wood, get the same amount of years. We don't put a lot of mileage on our trucks. We put a lot of hours on the truck. So the truck doesn't drive far. It pulls into a job site and will sit and idle. So the hours are up. And the OSHA regulations require it to be inspected every year. And that's where we're having issues, is keeping everything up to date and inspected so the guys are safe while they're working.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any more questions from council? Do we have any questions from the public? Is there a motion to place this on the October 1st agenda, legislative agenda?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right, with that being seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that moves forward to place on the October 1st legislative agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Dennis. Up next for Economic and Community Development, we have an ordinance approving fiscal year 24 budget amendment for unexpended CDBG funding in the amount of $35,655.94. I believe we have representative from Department of Economic and Community Development, Ms. Nona Watson.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Excuse me. As you just read, we are requesting council to approve us reallocating funds from CDBG in the category of public services. These funds are from 2017 and 2021 that were not expended, and we'd like to use them for our Healthy Moms, Healthy Babies program. And so we also have Monica here, in case anyone is not familiar with the program. And would you like to tell us a little bit about it?
So if you're not familiar with our program, this is a nurse home visitation program for our moms and parents, for pregnant and parenting mothers. We do not replace the primary either OBGYN or private practice physician, but we are an extension of them. So the program is a preventative program along with, we are in the home. It's a clinical-based program, meaning we have a nurse that goes in and works with the mom, either parent or parenting until the child is 2 years of age, unless there are circumstances of special needs, and they will continue on. So this will help support our extremely exceeding heavy caseload to support that work and to get some more hours, nursing hours back from, or add nursing hours to help offset some of the heavy caseloads. Question?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any council comment regarding this?
I think it's a great program. I'm glad we do it. And my question is why we have unexpended funding from any prior years. So, which is a big question, but how about,
Usually we have sub-recipients that we actually fund from year to year. So if there are any funds that are left over, like say a particular public service did not spend their funds, we either use it or lose it. So these are just funds left over that were not expended.
does that mean they didn't complete the work that was budgeted or that was contracted to them?
Doesn't necessarily mean they didn't complete the work, they just didn't spend all their money.
So they might have had some savings or...
Just some leftover funds. I would have to look specifically to tell you what it was.
And it was just community development block grant funds. Mm-hmm. And does that money sit with the city or does it stay at the federal level till we draw it down?
That's correct, the latter.
The latter, so we don't have it in a bank account somewhere we can, but we can...
Draw it down from HUD's IDIS system, correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions from council comment or questions regarding this? I believe this is a wonderful program. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Nona. From what I understand, there has been an increase in our community for the need for this program. Very beneficial to our mothers and our expectant mothers in the community to get the extra care that they need to bring new life into our community. Do we have any comment from the public regarding this? Is there a motion to place this on the October 1st, 2024 legislative agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that moves forward to be placed on our October 1st, 2024 legislative agenda. Up next, we have a resolution authorizing the New York City Planning Commission to forward the Comp Plan 2044. And I believe we have a representative here from in regards to that.
Good evening, ladies of the council.
Good evening.
My name is Jessica Fieldhouse. I'm a planner with C.S. Davidson. I did help facilitate completion of the comp plan. So the purpose for this item being on your agenda this evening is we are looking to start the mandated 45-day public comment period. So the way that works is we will forward the final draft of the comp plan to the County Planning Commission. They will do their formal review, and then while we're doing that, we're sending the comprehensive plan to all of our adjoining municipalities so that they can look at it, and to the school district. And then everybody else, just all of our other partners and stakeholders within the city so that they can take a look at the plan, make sure that we are capturing their goals, their future programs, and hitting everything that they need. So again, at this point, we're just looking for council's permission to forward that on to our adjoining municipalities, County Planning Commission, and the school district. Thank you. Yep. And I can take questions. There's a whole lot more I could say, but in a nutshell, that's what we're looking for.
Thank you, Jessica. And then will it be placed on our website, City of York website?
I believe it's already on the website,
Okay.
and we've already published a press release letting people know it's there.
Wonderful. Is there any other council comment?
Just briefly, what would be the process? So in the 45 days, what's the process for submitting comments? Or is that in this period of time, or is there another period of time? And if people want to submit comments, who should they submit them to? And
Yep, that's an excellent question. So what we had put in the press release that were comments and questions should be directed to Nancy Griffin. And then moving from there, once the 45-day comment period is over, I anticipate, we already had the York County Planning Commission review the draft and had informal comments, and we incorporated all of those. But I also expect to get other comments from stakeholders. So more than likely what will happen is after that 45-day review period and we get the County Planning Commission's formal recommendation, we'll have other comments to incorporate. Once we incorporate all of those comments, then we'll be back before council to schedule the adoption here, to schedule the hearing and move forward with adoption.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Yes?
yes.
Yes.
I think and when you say schedule the hearing,
So we have to have
updates at that point or after that? Like, if you agree to make changes that people suggest, when would they go?
that we would make the changes so long as they weren't substantive. If we had a substantive comment, like they wanted to change the future land use map, or they were suggesting a wholesale change to one of our chapters, I would probably want to take that back to at least the City Planning Commission. But as far as I understand, it doesn't need to go back to County Planning Commission again, does it? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So if it was a substantive change, I would want to take it back to our City Planning Commission. If we're getting comments about, please add this program, please add this stakeholder, those are things I feel comfortable doing without having to run it by somebody else. Okay. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there any other council comment? No. Any comment from the public regarding this? Is there a motion to place this on our October 1st, 2024 legislative agenda?
I'll move. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that moves forward. That will be placed on our October 1st, 2024 legislative agenda. Moving along to our general portion, we have a resolution amending the fee for duplicate bills. We have our treasurer, Mr. Jeff Holt, here.
Yes, we'd like to consider increasing our duplicate bill fee, which is $5 at the moment, to $10. We've worked really hard to try to keep everybody's address updated. We send out notices with all of the tax bills. You get a little information sheet. It says, will you please let us know if you have an address change so we can get your tax bill to the right place. We have a form that's posted on our website where you can also change it. We work closely with the counties, so if the county gets a change from someone, they notify us. If we get a change, we notify the county. But in a lot of ways, we still have a long way to go. One of the mortgage service companies, as I was telling Monica, just sent me a check for $20,000 saying, we give up. People that are escrowing with us for their mortgages are not sending us their tax bills. We can't keep up with what all the millage rates are in every municipal district. We can't keep up with what the homestead exclusions are for the schools. So we're trying to find some way to sort of say to people, you know, this really does take a lot of energy and work, and it really does. We live by the parcel numbers. People, of course, don't remember their parcel numbers. I wouldn't remember mine either. And the way things are addressed, sometimes that works when you put it in our tax off way. Sometimes it doesn't work. So we hope that by raising the fee, we can bring in a little more money and we can lower the request on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Questions?
How many duplicate bills do you normally do, like within a year?
When we send out a mailing of about 14,500 taxable properties in the city, I've been getting about 900 and something back. About a third of those may come back with a forwarding address. So that leaves 600 right there that we're scrounging around trying to find somebody that, where do we mail this? Do we mail it to the property owner? Do we mail it to a mortgage company? Do we mail it to their accountant? So there's enormous amount of variation. And then there are all those people that just say, oh, well, I don't know what I did with it. I got it, but I can't find it, so I need another one. So there's a significant number
That
of
is.
them.
Thank you. Is there any other council comment?
I just wanted to thank you for putting them on colored paper. When the property tax bill comes out with green or pink or yellow, it's very easy to identify that's an important piece of mail. So thank you for using that and not just white on white when it looks like any other solicitation. So thank
People
you.
look at our tax bills and they'll have, especially the city bill and the county bill at the same time, and they get mixed up on which is which, even though it says on the bill. So if you can just refer to it as the blue bill or the yellow bill, and we hope we're going to be consistent. The county is working with us very closely, and we meet with them on a quarterly basis to any kind of improvements that we can make on how we generate that bill and what the content of that bill is.
Thank you. Any other further comments from council? Any comments from the public? Is there a motion to place this on October 1st, 2024 legislative agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That moves forward to be placed on October 1st. Do you approve for this? That moves forward for October 1st, 2024 legislative agenda. Up next, we have a resolution granting access easements to 46 through 48 East Gas Avenue. And representatives from the administration, that will be Solicitor Flowers.
Yeah, so we were approached about access easements. So 46 to 48 East Gas Ave is the boarded up brick building there on East Gas next to our parking lot. And so the city parcel it has one like 15-foot wide small parcel that goes right up to the base of their brick building and then covers that grass area. And then we obviously own the parking lot. The parking lot is rented spaces. So they're looking to renovate that brick building, and the small parcel goes all the way back to the end. So they'd have to cross that in order to get to the back. They want to install a sidewalk on that grass median. All the the installation and the maintenance obligations are on them. That would allow their tenants to come out the back, reach the street. And they also want access through the parking lot to reach the back of the building for renovation purposes and general egress and ingress. They don't get it. They expressly don't get any parking rights. This is just in and out access, except for the sidewalk there. We were concerned in the event that in the future the city would like to either develop that parking lot or sell that parking lot. The easement would then the easement on the larger lot only would then transition to just a 15-foot section right next to the grass sidewalk area. So they would still have an alleyway should they need that. But any questions?
Any questions from council regarding this?
None.
Any questions from the public regarding this? I make a motion to place this on our October 1st, 2024 legislative agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that moves forward to be placed on October 1st, 2024 legislative agenda. Thank you. Moving forward to our Rules and Administrative Code, Councilwoman Buck. Councilwoman
is
Cluck.
ask Kim to
Yep.
explain. She's here.
Get to the page. But, okay, well, just, we're introducing a bill. We're introducing a bill updating Article 951, the Municipal Solid Waste Management Act. It was submitted by Kim Robertson and India Banks. Not sure what to.
Just ask them if they can
representatives
talk,
here.
speak to
Okay.
it, to
Yep.
speak.
All right.
We'll explain it. Indy and I worked together on this. It just so happened that it worked out really well. I was working on one part of it, and she said, wait, we've been wanting to make some changes to another part of it. And so we worked together in order to present these as one overall amendment to the article. So the first part I will throw over to India, which would be the sections 4 and 5.
Good evening. We are
Good evening.
amending this language for clarification, and we needed to update the prohibited piece about liquids being placed at curbside. So that's the first piece. And then the other piece is so that we remain eligible for DEP grant funding. So we had to update that language as well.
You said for what, DCED?
DEP, Department of Environmental Protection.
Grant funding, you said?
Yes, grant funding.
In India, that's the one that gives specifications for the type of container that
Type
can
of
be put out.
containers that can be put out, liquids that are put out that are hazardous. We had to clarify that language.
Thank you.
All right, that's the first half. I don't know if you want to ask questions on that or any questions?
I'll say move forward.
Okay. The second half, that's my doing. This is related to what we had discussed recently when we were requesting the extension of the York Water contract to continue refuse billing through the end of the year. And it was discussed that we've been using York Water initially for sewer and refuse billing since had a contract from 19. We started it in 2020. When we sold the wastewater treatment plant and sanitary sewer system, we updated our agreement with them to say, okay, you're not doing sewer anymore. Can you continue doing refuse till the end of the contract? The contract was slated to end in October. We then presented the extension through December that was approved. So they are going to issue the bill that gets issued in December, and then they will collect payments through the end of January. We then internally, between the finance office and then the treasurer's office for collecting the bills, we will be taking over the calculation and issue of the bill, and then the collection of
Taking over the what? I'm sorry.
the calculations, like determining what the fees are for the properties, issuing the bills out, and then collecting the fees as it's coming in. And we're looking to do this. The biggest change with this is that originally our refuse billing was so closely tied to our sewer billing, and the sewer billing was based off of calculated with the water usage for the month before. So it was a month by month need in order to issue the bills, and then the refuse just kind of tied along, even though refuse is a flat fee. So what we're making a change. Let's also essentially update our process, and we're looking for quarterly billing instead of monthly. We're not looking at this point to change the rates at all. The article already had a statement in there saying that though the rates were listed in the article, that at any point the rates could be updated with approval of council from a resolution. At this point, until we finish out this year's not only the budget process for 2025, but we also are looking for doing an RFP for a new trash hauler, which would be effective in May. We're not in a position yet to say, hey, we're going to need to increase rates because of increased expenses. So we're not looking to do that at this point. We're just looking to keep that the same and only ask that we can specifically, as it said, collect the annual fee quarterly instead of monthly. While we were in there, we were looking for the fact that working with Treasurer Jeff Code is that we already had a section in there saying that it was the obligation of persons owning a property that they answer any inquiries we have in terms of determining if they are residential and how many units, if they're commercial and how many units, if they can opt out of service, or if the property is considered vacant. But we also wanted to make sure that there's an understanding that we need contact information on file for the property owners as well, because we see the issues that Treasurer Jeffcoat and his staff deal with now, and that we've dealt with in the past with our billing for sewer and refuse, and then what currently issues we have with the taxes sometimes. So that we thought, hey, let's put that in there while we're in there looking to do the quarterly change. Lastly, the one factor that was still tied to water usage in this article associated with refuse billing was the determination of what a vacant property is. So as I just mentioned, there's three categories for billing. One's a minimum fee, which is established for either those that have applied and been approved to opt out from our services, or for properties that meet the minimum criteria in order to be considered vacant. And then we have a residential fee that's per unit up to 50, and then a commercial amount that is per unit as well. So when it came to determining there was already a provision in here about how to request to opt out and get the approval for that, which means then you're still required to have your own service in place, but we still can bill you the minimum. At the moment, it's $105 a year. The criteria for determining a vacant property in the article currently was tied to a water usage of 400 gallons or less in the prior month. So again, we were tied to a month-to-month, and we were tied to getting water usage data from York Water. So instead of that, I had reviewed several different municipalities' ordinance regarding this, and one that I thought worked really well is this is essentially Scranton's setup. They went to annual billing within the last several years and love it, by the way, but we're just we'll do quarterly to start with. But what we're looking to do is actually essentially, it's not going to fall on our parts administratively determine if a property is vacant or not. Now we're going to essentially put it out on the property owners to say, hey, this property is vacant, and have a process in which they can essentially apply to be considered vacant and be able to submit a notarized affidavit certifying as such, and then also providing us the utilities bills in order to justify that the property is vacant. So we are definitely looking at this point too. We already a transition in place. What we're looking is that we're going to do a January 15th billing date for the first quarter of 2025. We're going to take whoever at the end of December properties are listed as vacant or minimum. We are going to go ahead and bill them that way for the first quarter. But we are going to have essentially a campaign in place where we're going to reach out to all of those properties and say, hey, this is what you need to provide us. This is the due date for you in order to do it, in order to continue with the vacant minimum payment amount. Otherwise, you're going to be charged as a residential or commercial based on what we know about the properties. So from then on, we will then be following up periodically and making sure that we have at least an annual renewal of essentially the vacant status. Those are the changes. The only other thing that looks like it's added is in section 951.16, section C, you can see the red adding of any due credit as verified by the city shall be issued to the owner's account, or a refund may be made, yada, yada, yada. I actually moved that from the original section A. So that's not new language, I just shifted it down. But I believe that's all the changes for the back half of this article we were looking to do and what's related to the changes to refuse billing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone from council have any comments or questions?
I want to know any comments from Joe, the treasurer's office, or treasurer. Do you have any input on this?
Not really. Kim and I, we've been in conversation all along.
You have to come to the mic.
I think it's going to be a transition, as she's indicated. Just the changeover from York Water Company to doing it ourselves is going to be a little challenge. But we are looking at some billing services tied into OpenGov that I think will not only help us do this billing. As you well know, we're spending over $400,000 in collection fees with York Water Company on an annual basis. We think we can cut that in half or a fourth if we can just get it up and running. So that's why, as Kim says, we sort of feel we've got to get into that, and we've got to get all the data back from York Water Company to sort of know where we start and how we can transition from the current fees, the current operation, into one that's internal. But we're for it because we think it'll really save us money and we can offer better service at the same time.
Well, I agree. How does it look for your staffing? Will you be able to manage the extra load?
Well, we hope we're going to carve some new staffing out of that $435,000 saving, because it's definitely going to take some more help to do it. I've already been, Kim doesn't know this, I met with the county last week because we're talking about how we're going to get the bills printed. I have a follow-up meeting with Dacio. They're doing our mail services already, and they do some printing of bills as well, as does H&H that we've talked to. So I think we'll be ready to go in January.
Oh, this is great news. I'm glad this is happening.
It's gonna happen.
I also had a question. I'm great. I mean, I think this is wonderful that we're bringing it back in. My question was on does a property, I just was, when I was reading it, curious, and maybe I didn't read it carefully enough. Before it can be deemed a vacant property, must they show that it has been vacant for 6 months?
That, I believe, is a property shall be considered vacant if it is totally unoccupied and generates no refuse for an entire consecutive 6-month or 12-month period. So they can go ahead and apply and say, hey, for the last 6 months. Now, at the very least, when they say, the last 6 months, then they will be able from that point forward for consideration.
That's what I thought,
There's
yeah.
also stipulations in there that if it's determined then, now wait a minute, it's very clear that since we don't have them as vacant and we've been billing the full amount, that there are provisions in there in terms of how we can issue a refund or a credit to their account. Most likely what we're going to see initially, and it will be an influx that we'll have to take into consideration, is that we're just seeing justification for the ones that are currently getting the minimum as vacant to continue. But that provision would be in place then for new properties that might have previously been occupied and aren't now. But yes, that would be the stipulation that this is an extended period and not necessarily a one-off in order to qualify for the minimum amount as opposed to the residential or commercial.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Just want to say thank you to Business Administrator Robertson, Treasurer Jeff Cope for working together on this. I believe this is going to be very beneficial financially for us as a city to bring these funds back into our city. And the second part of it is not only are we bringing the funds back into our city, but we have the opportunity to create employment for some individuals in our community. So we have the opportunity to do that as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other comments? Are we allowed to ask for public?
Public comment.
Public comment on this? Okay. Hearing none, then we move to put this bill on the October 1st legislative agenda. No?
Second.
Second. Moved in second, so this will sit until the next meeting of council.
No, we just need all in favor?
Oh, all in favor?
Aye. And then this will be placed on our October 1st, 2024 legislative agenda. You're welcome.
Okay. Sorry, we have another one. Introducing a bill updating Article 952, waste minimization and recycling, submitted by Kim Robertson and India Banks, and proposed to go on the legislative agenda for October 1st. Could you speak? Would you like to speak to that?
Yes. Essentially, when I reached out to India about 951, she was like, oh, we've got some changes and we'll send it to you. And then when she sent me, she's like, hey, I've got 952 as well. So India will be able to explain the change that they're requesting.
952 is a requirement for DEP so that we can stay eligible for grant funding.
And specifically, it was adding a minimum for those that have their own hauler service that's not our own, that it's like, you have it, great, you pay for it, it has to be a minimum of once per week pickup.
Great.
Thank you.
Do we have any comments from council or questions?
None.
I have none.
Any comments or questions from the public? Okay. Then I will move to put this on the October 1st legislative agenda. Do I have a second? Or if I make the movement? Does anybody second that?
Second.
Okay, second. So moved in second. We'll move to move for a vote. Or
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
All in favor?
Opposed, no.
Yes.
And that moves forward to be placed on October 1st, 2024 legislative agenda.
Great. Okay. Then we have a bill updating Article 136, the Small and Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, submitted by Kim Robertson, Business Administrator. And would you like to speak to that updated bill?
Sorry, I'm laughing because this is such a long time coming that like there's just like this feeling of relief that I'm like, we at least got this far, yes. Which also just emphasized the excitement behind this, not only because, I'm looking to, check off a to-do on my list, but also the importance of, we've had this Article 136, which is currently titled Small Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, on our books since, I believe, 1993. But ultimately, from the beginning, the criteria behind it, the stipulations for how much percentages of the city's available contracts go to certain, it was so complicated that the only part of it that I've seen actually be used in my time was giving preferential points to those local, businesses that have essentially city zip codes. We were giving them the preferential points as part of the RFP scoring process. So we've been doing that, but there's so much more to this that it has been essentially an initiative from administration, supported by councils, a couple councils, in order we want to make sure that the provisions of Article 136 of the city's codified ordinances are being followed as we have it written. We needed to determine what the revisions that need to be done to make it more effective. We also then were, of course, keeping in mind what, not only to make it effective, but that we can actually administer it internally. So we were looking initially at, what kind of administrative tools we might need in order to do that. So this process started with us initiating with an individual, attorney Franklin M. Lee, who is the country's leading authority on socioeconomic policies that promote the use of small minority-owned and women-owned businesses in government contracting. So we reached out to Attorney Lee and essentially provided him with our current article and explained to him what we were trying to do, and then he came back with essentially a red line draft and many suggestions. First of which I think is important to point out, is that our actual starting amendment is that we are looking to replace the disadvantaged word in the title with local. And specifically, and this is the first comment on Attorney Lee's red line, is that he just says there's no eligibility requirements in the program as currently written that address either social or economic disadvantages. So having the name at the title was great, but there was nothing throughout the entire thing forward. It was very focused on small businesses. He does make note, and there was definitely discussion to start with, is like, what direction do we go with this in terms of our focus on who we're trying to get to and to reach? And he offered up essentially 3 options for consideration: a focus on economic development objective of attracting new, large and small businesses to relocate into the city. Or are we looking to enhance the capacity and participation of existing small, minority, and local business enterprises on city contracts? Or his overall recommendation was that we look to combine the 2 categories of small and local into a single classification that is eligible for some degree of preferential treatment in our procurement procedures. And there was a consensus among those involved that we were going to take Attorney Lee's suggestions in terms of the way to go. There was also early, there's parameters behind in order for us to determine who's disadvantaged, that there are surveys that need to be done within our community to draw that line so we can make those determinations. And when we realize that while we focus on small and local, as it's mentioned in the purpose, that we're going to be focusing on essentially focusing on the significantly underutilized minority and women-owned businesses who on average tend to be smaller than the similarly situated non-minority businesses. So the small business enterprise would also essentially directly help those groups, which was a focus for us. Then it was determined that we were going to focus on the small and local and take the disadvantage out. So though the word isn't there, overall what we've built here is we are looking to still keep those smaller and the classification of those underutilized groups who own the small businesses in mind in terms of giving them the advantage of preference in our contracts. So what we got from Attorney Lee, then it turned into an internal group of when Scott Miller came in as Chief of Staff, when Dan Hevner and myself as business administration had been working on it. Initially, Tom Ray, the former business administrator, was assisting with us as a consultant. And then our big turning point, because this is a very big process, is a very big article, was that when Solicitor Flower came in, she was a huge help in essentially helping us kind of put all of our thoughts together, and then also making sure that we were keeping legal in terms of what we were trying to do. So that's where we essentially came up with the amendment that you see before you in terms of what we're looking to change within this article in order, again, to meet our goals of having an actual effective article that we can actually administer and actually see the impact out in our community. So that's the story, is how we got here. There are a couple significant changes that I kind of just want to go ahead and point out, which might answer some questions along the way. When we started going through this and took a look at it, there were 2 things. First of all, the focus on essentially the internal administration of the program was solely on essentially the economic development aspect of economic community development. And that still is a very important part of this in terms of making sure that as our liaisons out to the business community within the city of York, that we're definitely going to be working together in order to make sure we are advertising this program and advertising where the businesses can actually log into our procurement system and start up profiles and make the request to be considered, and for small or local designations, and keeping that flow of information going so that we can actually reach out to the businesses that we're looking to focus on. Mm-hmm. But overall, it was decided as the group that we should, this is the perfect opportunity for us to put essentially what is the, the EBOC that we have in here, which would be a collaborative between members of the, sorry, get to where I'm at. There we go, the EBOC. So that's Equal Business Opportunity Committee. So what we're looking to do is not have it, the whole weight of this, either, within Director Watson's department, but then also that would have to end up on her current staff and or additional staff members. This committee is made up in the what's proposed to you as a representative from the mayor's office, a representative from the Department of Business Administration, a representative from the Department of Economic and Community Development, and the City Council Business Administration liaison. So those pieces were decided in terms of essentially between the mayor and council being involved, and then business administration when it comes to the actual procurement process, and all the financial information we have, and then again, like I said, a representative from Economic Community Development to assist with the business liaison part of it, that we could take the work that was on the shoulder of potentially one person and work together in order to essentially oversee the program, which is what the EBOC would do in here. Initially, again, similar to what we were saying with the vacant properties, there's going to be a lot of work to start with in terms of the applications we get in reviewing them. Once we get the program rolling, then we will have periodic applications that the committee would get together and review and approve for the designation. After that, the committee then would essentially be the watchdogs over it. They would be the ones that if essentially anybody in the public and or any other way we determine that somebody who we have given a designation to may not actually deserve it, they would be the one who would review those concerns. And then ultimately the important part of this is what we've gone into this is that this is a starting point to regroup on this article. So there's essentially a review process yearly that's worked into the article, so that it's written that essentially the agencies, the departments would be responsible for sharing information with the EBOC in terms of how many contracts they have that actually went to local and small businesses. Obviously, business administration will assist with, the numbers and the financials aspects of it, but that they'll be reporting back essentially what, how and what steps they took throughout the year in order to follow this article and make sure it works the way we want it to work. At that point, the EBOC, if they're determining that, hey, maybe we're not actually reaching as, many businesses as we want, or maybe, there's some part of the process that should be adjusted, would make recommendations to the mayor, and then that would come back if there's a need for a change to the ordinance language again. And frankly, it'd be great if we, hit a home run the first time of trying to change this, but I would imagine that I might be sitting here a year from now saying, hey, this has been the first year of this has been great, but we've determined that we do need to make tweaks here and there in order to be more successful with it. I think those are the highlights. The one thing I did want to make a mention to is, which I found a little odd until I made the connection, is that our Human Relations Commission was in here essentially doing kind of like the watchdog role in terms of if there were any concerns, like I just said about the EBOC, in terms of somebody getting the designation that they shouldn't have. They were essentially the group that were tasked with reviewing those claims. And at first I was like, well, that's kind of an odd connection. But I believe that goes back to the disadvantaged part of it that was originally in there, where the focus may have been on the social and economic statuses of the businesses that we were going through. But as we were trying to make sure that we put together a process that could easily be administered, at that point, essentially what the HRC was a part of when it came to the old focus was replaced with the EBOC as a whole. So I think that was important to mention as a big change in this. But at this point, I'll take questions. There's a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. There are a lot, or it is a big bill. And so I guess we'll start with, do we have any questions from council at this point?
I don't have any questions. I just want to comment that thank you to our team here at the city, our administration, for the hard work on this. This is a long time coming. I know this was spearheaded by our previous council president, Sandy Walker. And so we and other previous councils during that time frame, this has been a long time coming. It's been a lot of hard work to get this to this point where we are now, but it's a great starting point. I'm excited to move this forward and excited about the opportunity that this has for our business community here within the city of York.
I've been in contact with Kim and given some feedback related to the article, and for me, and then I did actually talk with York County Economic Alliance, the Downtown Inc., because they offer Bloom grants to small businesses, and so I wondered about the definitions of small and local business that are currently written in here. For me, they seem broad, and I don't know how to suggest it, but I was thinking that they're too broad. So as far as experience in the city, so we say a small business is 100 employees or less, and I know that I guess the Bloom grant, they consider less than 50 full-time employees to be small from their perspective, and checked out the federal definitions for small businesses. That's right around the 100. And then looking at Philadelphia, they have a similar article on their books, and they're slightly more restrictive than the way ours is written right now. And that's what my questions or requests are, that could we narrow it down, because 100 employees seems rather large to me based on limited knowledge of the number of businesses and their sizes in the city. Have we done a study? And then also the 51% ownership. I don't know why it's not a higher number if we're really targeting our York City businesses by allowing just close to half being outside the city. I just feel like, why not 100%? I don't understand that. And
First, I can address the small business. So this is one of the big challenges we had, was to make that determination. What are we suggesting the change to be? And Chief of Staff Scott Miller did a lot of work on this and actually presented, we would, and Solicitor Flower can say, one's this and one's that and one's this. So he did compile several suggestions for the mayor to essentially pick from in terms of which direction we wanted to present. He looked into what the definitions are on the federal and the state definitions. And then, let's see, according to the Small Business Administration, it's very, and that's what the language that was in there to start with, was very kind of manufacturer manufacturer base in terms of the parameters, but the Small Business Authority, most manufacturing companies with 500 employees or fewer, and most non-manufacturing businesses with an average annual receipt under 75 million. And we're like, okay, well, that doesn't, we need to go smaller area to us than that. So Scott did talk to Kevin Shriver at the YCEA to get his thoughts on it. And he said that he suggested one of two approaches. First of all, they have a definition of a micro business, which is up to 10 employees or under 500,000 in revenue. And then small business was as 11 to 30 employees or 501 to $2 million in revenue. Though he preferred, Scott just said that, you know, we should probably just stick to the small business as rather to create the two categories. And that's where we referenced then YCA's restart grants, specifically when it was responding to the pandemic that they put out. We're like, okay, what did they use there? And they used the under 100 employees and under 2 million in annual revenue. So that's ultimately what we went to. The city definitions, he even looked into that. Another possibility is use the city's criteria for our startup grant program. The advantage is some consistency. The disadvantage is whether we want to be much more greatly restricted in the business pool. He said that was the definition of small was 10 or fewer employees and 500,000 or less in annual gross receipts. And lastly, he made reference to Pennsylvania's COVID definition during the COVID period, and he said small was in the program that they had for small business assistance meant 25 or fewer employees and 100 million. So this is one of the examples of, you know, on my end, whatever we come up with, that's fine. We just did put the work behind in terms of trying to get to the suggestion that we made. And to reiterate that I see this as like, we spent a lot of time coming up with those, and we can continue to spend a lot of time coming up with those amounts. And again, I'm in complete favor of whatever council as a whole determines, but I just like to reiterate the fact that it's a starting point. We can come back and make, you know, when we get a couple months, a year under our belt, and we're like, hey, we really aren't hitting the group, you know, that we're looking for, we can adjust the amounts. Specifically for the local, we did not tweak that. That essentially was the language that was there initially. So, and we reviewed that and didn't feel that there was much of a need to change that criteria to fit what our goals are now as opposed to the small. So that's historically how we got to what was presented.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other council comment?
No. How about any public comment? Yep. Thank you, Manuel.
Start with, I guess it's an easy one. Manuel Gomez, City of York. In the certification and bidder process, it mentions recognized third parties that may designate the SBE and LBE status of a firm or whatever applicant may appear. What would be a recognized third party?
So the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the feds also have these small business procurement initiatives. And so they use third parties where the businesses go out and get certified as, you know, small business, as women-owned business, veteran-owned business, that kind of thing. So it's that reference is to one of these organizations that does that certification process. And so the entities come away, or the businesses come away with this certification.
We don't have any example, perhaps at this moment in time, of what one specific third party may appear to be. It's okay if we don't. It's just something that stood out to me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Could be key. Thank you. Thank you. And I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I interrupted you, so I apologize.
Thank you. I really appreciate the fact that the Human Relations Commission role was brought up, because there's a reason why the Human Relations was mentioned and why the article itself was even instituted. That's all very integrated and critical to understand contextually, at least the spirit of why this even happened. Part of what stands out to me is, the way I should frame this is, what's the standing with regards to the Department of Economic Development and the fact that the EBOC, if established and this all goes through, it can make suggestions to the mayor that any agency that is, if we read the language, non-compliant, let's just say, in terms of these provisions, if they take effect, you can make recommendations to the mayor that the mayor address those issues, whereas the way it was written, and I get it, it wasn't always fully implemented and actually realized, the Economic Development Department would actually take action, where now it would just be a recommendation to the mayor to actually take that action, notwithstanding all the other activities that take place within the EBOC and all the other provisions in there. That's something that I noticed. And the Human Relations Commission now not having a role, the certification and bidder process sort of takes over all of that. You may want to look at how you actually approach some safeguards with regards to the fact that the HRC is no longer involved. Do we have any comment from the HRC? Although it may have been previously written into this article, they're not there now. And I don't know if we have any comment as to what their thoughts would be. Also, to the role of the Economic Development Department, only being able to make suggestions to the mayor. Do I anticipate anything happen? Not necessarily. But in the sense of having these processes in place, you want to understand where your protocols can lead you. If we're just making suggestions to the mayor's office, I mean, it's just stop there potentially. I'm not even going to get into all the other definitional stuff. I'm pretty sure we're going to discuss this further, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. I appreciate your comments, because I also wanted to bring up the fact that the Equal Business Opportunity Committee, as defined in the article, is currently 4 members, and it could perhaps benefit, or what happens when you have a tie, and is there a consideration for adding a 5th member to that committee? And I guess that's for Kim.
Essentially, this was the suggestion given to the mayor. I had an additional suggestion of representative from the controller's office, because then that kind of goes in terms of the controller having a role in approving or signing off on the contracts, and then as part of our requisition process in terms of payments going out. But again, this was the recommendation that the mayor approved to submit. So any changes that council would suggest to make to it would be at your discretion.
Thank you.
If we had changes to suggest to it, and I apologize, I'm not sure I understand the procedure, would we suggest those now, or would we table this or leave it in committee for it to be worked on with the administration?
At this time, you can do either or. You can, we can vote for it, and then you can make those suggestions at a later time, and then they can come before, or.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Because I think it would be worth having a 5th person or a 5th member so that there is a tiebreaker, and also propose that it would be somebody from the Human Relations Commission or that their board, so that it can address the non-discrimination policy in 136.02. Which talks about determining it's policy of the city not to enter into a contract, et cetera, with any business entity that has discriminated, et cetera. And so the question is, how is that determined? Who is able to determine that? And I believe that would be the HRC, but perhaps there's someone else. And so that's maybe that needs to be written into it to cover that section. Or maybe you can speak to the plan for identifying that. Maybe I missed it.
Yeah, that's.
So if I can just respond to the.
Yes.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. So 13602, the non-discrimination policy, is language that goes into all of the city contracts, because it is the city's policy that we don't contract with partners that participate in discrimination. Whether or not there is an entity or there's a city that an entity that we've contracted with there is an issue with discrimination, that's a separate issue with HRC that HRC is going to investigate. If we come to find out that there's an issue while we're under contract with this entity, we're going to say, this policy's in our contract, you're in breach, we're done. And so that investigation piece is within the HRC's realm, and that's separate. That's not necessarily within the contracting piece of the Article 136, because it's limited to the question of whether or not it's limited to the procurement with small or local businesses. Does that make sense?
That does.
Okay.
Thank you.
That makes sense.
Thank you. My only other proposed change would be in the quantities. I don't know, do we know how many businesses in the city have more than 100 employees? I can think of 2 large businesses in the city that might have more than 100 employees, but is that a good number based on the number of businesses in the city, or is everybody under that threshold and covered by this article? What's the break?
And this is something that we originally reached out to Economic Community Development, specifically seeing, what data they had on local businesses. When we were at the point of determining this, there was some shifting in personnel in economic development, and I know at the time they were still working on gathering that information, and we didn't have a very clear picture of what it is. There may be new data. I know that they're fully staffed. They may have more data that can be used towards this decision, but at the time, they didn't have enough data that we could actually use to compare it to. Now, what I'm hoping is, again, within the next year, when we have the connected effort to be reaching out, we can use the information that they're already doing now that they're fully staffed and be able to engage with the businesses and the community to the extent that they want. And I know they're working on their own database of information between what we start collecting in terms of those that we can encourage to sign up for our vendor database and have the option to actually apply for either of these designations, and the information that they are gathering, again, or I would task it on the EBOC then when they do their yearly review to reach back out to YCA and, is there any new information you have from their Bloom program or whatnot? We can again reevaluate that. But at the time that this suggestion was finalized, there was not enough information to be able to use it to make that determination. That would have been a lot easier if we had information in front of us that we would have been able, hey, we want this part, so this means they are all the common factors that would help us encourage them being able to get preference in our contracts, but the information was not available at the time.
Thank you for that. And so that would be where I would start small. I would say if there's a chance that 90% of the businesses in the city are going to qualify for this, then I would propose that we start with a much lower number, 30, 40, maybe 50, or go with the Bloom numbers that you got from Kevin Schreiber, I think you said maybe 50 they considered. Because if you're going to try to implement this, I think it might be difficult if it's going to draw every business in the city toward it, and would recommend or ask or whatever we're allowed to propose something significantly smaller, start small and then grow it. So I don't know where to go with that exactly, but that's my opinion on it. I think that if we start with 100, it's a lot, and it's easier to start small and grow other than.
The only other thing I would
Perhaps
add is, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Is that there's two different distinct designation that can be given. So the small is the one, the local is the other. And so we very well may see that, and just for everybody, the local one specifically, a local business enterprise is an entity which meets at least two of the following criteria. A principal office or headquarters of the business is located in the city of York. More than 50% of the full-time equivalent employees of the business are residents of the city, or the owners that own and control at least 51% of the business are residents of the city. So if they can meet two of those three criterias, then they get the same level of preference, but under the local business enterprise designation as opposed to the small. So I have a feeling we're going to, what we may not initially be able to filter through with the small, that we are going to get them with the local. But again, it's a starting point, and if, again, it's the consensus of council to adjust those numbers before considering for approval, then, I mean, I'm in support of that.
Thank you.
I would just add that looking at Bloom is one thing, but my experience in the time that Bloom's been in existence, which is basically my time on council, is that they are funding mostly small and more specialty businesses. And we're looking at contractors in a different way for projects that we're doing for the city, for our work. And I think that what I have taken away from this process in the past couple of years is getting contracts for our work to businesses that are from the city instead of businesses that are outside the city. And that's why I'm not opposed to the 100
Correct.
And down. We're not contracting with restaurants or, special, small, really small businesses, art shops or whatever. We're looking at a different type, in my opinion, from what I've seen with Bloom and their recipients, is we're looking at a different type of business that we're trying to attract to do the business of the city. Put a roof on, just do bigger things.
Yes, and I totally agree. And when you're looking at Bloom is a resource to provide to businesses to help them get solidified, to help them to grow, to help them to receive the resources and finances that they need so they can be a stabilized business. This is not about that. This is what Council Vice President Buckingham shared. This is so that those businesses can bid or come in for contracts here in the city of York. So something totally different when you're looking at the definition and what it's utilized for and what the purpose is behind it.
When we're renovating buildings.
Yes.
Or, bigger work, bigger, projects for the city.
Right. Thank you. I guess so we want to focus on local, and not as much the size, because we do have larger that are local that we want to encourage, is what I'm hearing. So somebody like a Kinsley would be able to perhaps fall under this from the local standpoint. And that's
a little larger. They're a little larger.
They're bigger than 100.
Huge.
They're huge.
They're huge. They're not a small business.
Maybe something like Washington
Dowling, yes.
Yeah.
because we don't know the numbers, so, I don't know the numbers of the employees at the different. businesses, so. Okay, so does anybody on council have any suggestions or changes? No?
No.
Okay.
Is there any public comment?
Manuel Gomez, City of York. I can't let go of the third-party designation for that certification and bidder process. Council may wish to consider either apportioning how much of the recognition goes towards third-party and how much of it happens through the EBOC. You've removed, if this were to go through, you will remove a lot of council's role in that certification and bidding process. The liaison with business administration would play a role in the EBOC, but the way that it was before, and I get it, again, this wasn't often realized, was that if there was a dispute in certification and bidding, the council, after the Human Relations Commission did its vetting, council would have an open hearing within a specific set timeline. That's not going to take place. You do have your liaison that will be on the EBOC, but other than that, the pipeline has been shortened. That may be good and well, but in terms of review and how you actually get the certification and finally bidding process done, that should probably take a lot more focus, and I'm not hearing enough discussion. But consider, please, making it that the third-party designations for these certifications as SBE and LBE, you either limit them or that the EBOC specifically and explicitly states which third parties, and this may be a dynamic thing, of course, they will actually accept. Small Business Administration, I don't care, Philadelphia, Commerce, it doesn't matter, but just something so that you don't have, and it would be a good problem, I guess, but that you don't have all of these designations coming in that maybe are going to be, I don't want to use the wrong word, but it's mostly about having the proper set of controls in place so that you're really driving this. You're really driving this. The spirit of how we do it is completely changing with the Human Relations Commission not being involved, City Council for the most part not being involved. Yes, it's an article duly ordained, but it's an entirely different process as it flows. I wish that there was more questions regarding those actual things. And anybody have any comment as to how economic development feels? Like, I get how the director feels in terms of the workload, but the fact that you can only make suggestions to the mayor now when an agency is, well, non-compliant. Is there any comment on that, and has anybody received any comment from the Human Relations Commission for how this is now going to step aside from the spirit of how it was originally implemented?
Thank you.
Kim, or would Kim or Nona be able to answer that question from the public, or try to tackle that question?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm not quite sure ultimately what authority economic development themselves would have over another department in actuality. Everyone reports to the mayor.
Right.
So he is the one who would ultimately need to address any of the concerns with a department and agency, as it says in here, which means it can get down to the offices or bureaus, but he would be the one that would have to be the one to address if one of the agencies were not following the criteria. Ultimately, the overall request for proposal procurement process does have a centralized administration within the finance office. So and that was part of the way this was written before, it did make it seem like everyone on their own was running this process, and that there was no, central procedures and process behind it. And so there was more open for, say, one agency to take consideration one way as to how they would give, word their RFPs in order to take this article in consideration or not. But the way we are structured now is that we have a procurement officer as one of our staff accountants who essentially manages the program and works with the agencies in order to post and their RFP processes and going through them. So we do have that central oversight as well. And I think that was part of the nature of the way it's written now, is that it was taking into account that we were all more of a separate entity than, and there's been times that I will admit in the past that there's, for various factors, that the city has worked in separate sections and not together. But as it is right now, we are all working off of one system and one process. So again, not saying that it's going to, prevent any possible issues that would fall under this, but it is less likely than it would have been in terms of the process that was described in the current article.
Thank you.
Do you have any?
Nope. Is there a motion to place this on the October 1st, 2024 legislative agenda?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I didn't vote on that,
Nay.
sorry.
Anyone opposed?
Nay. Yeah.
And that moves forward to be placed on our October 1st, 2024 legislative agenda. This evening, as far as up next is council comment, I do have a brief statement to make this evening. In light of recent unfortunate incidents that have occurred in the city of York involving an individual walking throughout our community with an unconcealed gun, we have heard from several residents, businesses, and organizations their discontentment concerning community members regarding the rights of individuals to carry unconcealed weapons in the public. Currently, Pennsylvania state law allows individuals to openly carry firearms and preempts local gun safety ordinances that would regulate lawfully possessing, owning, transferring, and transporting of firearms, ammunition, or ammunition components. Therefore, we as local legislators cannot institute a local ordinance that would override the laws of the Commonwealth. Fighting for the safety of our citizens with regards to gun laws and gun violence has been and continues to be an uphill battle. As local legislators, we understand your fears and concerns about gun control in our city. To show our commitment to addressing gun control, on May 21st, 2024, City Council passed Ordinance Number 15, establishing Article 702, unlawful manufacture of firearms, to prohibit all aspects of the manufacturing of ghost guns. Council also removed the 100 officer cap from Article 145 of the Police Department to authorize the hiring of more police officers. Please understand that although we pass local legislation, we recognize more work does need to be done. Currently, Philadelphia, being a first-class city, is the only jurisdiction in Pennsylvania that is authorized to regulate open carrying of firearm, and they have. Although on a state level, we may not have strong backing to implement laws to prohibit the open carrying of firearm in public, a more attainable goal would be to lobby our state legislators to require a license to openly carry firearms in third-class cities. I would even go one further and require on a local level that anyone who openly carries a firearm in the city of York be required to display their license on their person at all times in the public. I realize this may not be the answer everyone is looking for, but it is a start. We will continue to stand with our residents, students, our families, teachers, organizations, businesses, and visitors, and lobbying our state legislators to enact stricter gun laws for the safety and peace of mind of our citizenry. As a council president, I pledge to meet with State Representative Carol Hill Evans to come up with a game plan to bring attention to our state legislators on the need to establish laws on licensing to openly carry firearm in third-class cities. The safety and peace of mind of our community members, especially our children, are extremely valuable, and we all should be able to walk freely throughout our community without fear or of being approached by individuals carrying open firearms. I urge the community to take part in this important matter and contact our state legislators and demand laws regulating the open carrying of firearms for our safety and peace of mind. Contact information for our state senators can be found by visiting www.pasen.gov and www.house.state.pa.us for the House of Representatives. In the words of the late author and speaker Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Thank you. Do we have any further council comment this evening? Do we have any administration comment?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Our next committee meeting is scheduled for October 23rd, 2024, 6 p.m. here in council chambers. As a reminder, all agenda items are due by 12 noon on 10/16/2024. Thank you, everyone. Have a phenomenal evening. It's 7:24 p.m. and our meeting is adjourned.